the biggest concentration of Jews outside of Israel live in the US. And even though there are still Jews in Europe, and they're affected by the anti-Semitism in Europe, with everything that's going on there, I'm pretty sure it's going to go down to zero. Here, I was thinking, wait, I've seen that pattern before. Jews are native to the Middle East. And there is a clear description of genocide of the Jews in one scripture in particular, the Quran. Alexandria and Baghdad and Jerusalem and Medina was a Jewish city.
Egypt used to have 75,000 Jews. Where are your Jews? Syria, you had tens of thousands of Jews. Where are your Jews? Iraq, you had over 135,000 Jews. Where are your Jews?
And there was a Jewish kingdom in Yemen. So where did that all go? After filming that, I was like, why am I putting those numbers out of my arse? Let me just check the real numbers. I just thought that there were more European Jews than Middle Eastern Jews, and I had some prior knowledge of events that happened, but the real numbers, when I looked at them, I was shocked. So here's the data. In the 11th century, only 3% of Jews were Ashkenazi Jews. More broadly, only a small minority of the Jews were living in Christian countries. Most lived under Islam, which is Middle East area, North Africa, and so on. In the middle of the 17th century, 40% of Jews were Ashkenazi Jews. By the end of 18th century, it was 60% of Jews that were Ashkenazi Jews living under Christianity. And in 1920, 92% of Jews worldwide were Ashkenazi Jews. From 97%, they went down to 8%. You see, I don't think that Jews really assimilated or converted in those countries because Jews are very stubborn. It's not something they would do. And then I just imagined like this Muhammad Hijab's guy voice in my head going like, oh, they just saw the beauty of Islam and converted. No, they didn't. Look at the numbers. Look at that data. Is it a genocide or is it assimilation? 11th century Middle East, 20 million people. 16th century Middle East, 18 million people. In Europe, that also suffered from the Black Death and lots of wars, it went from 40 million to 78 million. Africa went from 32 million to 47 million. And my guess is that if you look at Northern Africa separately, the numbers will be more similar to the Middle East than they are. Because the data I looked at consider the Middle East area, but without Africa. Okay, the Middle East lost 2 million people in that period of time. That's a huge number to lose in 500 years. That means there is a continuous butchering. And when I looked it up and read about it, I realized how much butchering happened in Persia, how much butchering happened in India when the Islam tried to Islamize India. The death toll was incredible. And guess what? They burned books, they burned prayer places, they burned people. Doesn't it sound familiar? And then after that, the Muslims, just like the Nazis tried to do, claim that everything that was invented and created and achieved in the world is somehow under the Muslim achievement. Even though a lot of the scientists they claim that were Muslim and they didn't like Islam at all. They were persecuted by Islam, and the Muslims didn't even recognize those scientists. The European Christians recognized the work of those scientists, not the Muslims that take credit for it. 1500 to 1820, the population in the Middle East only grew in 1.4 times. Europe, 3 times. And if you think they had better medicine or anything like that, maybe. But also did East Asia. It grew in 3 times. And Africa, 1.6. And South Asia, 2 times more. It's crazy, like the further you go from Islam, the more growth you have of population. What did you do, Muslims? And what did I even expect? Like, you deny what happened on October 7th. You deny the Armenian genocide. You deny the Holocaust. Everything that happens in your territory is denied somehow and ignored. and people in Yemen are starving and it's ignored.
2 million of Yemen's children are malnourished and 1.7 million have been forced to flee their homes.
In Pakistan, there is a huge ethnic cleansing and chasing of minorities, and it's ignored.
The government has set a November 1st deadline for them to leave or be expelled.
Look at what is happening in Nigeria. And I promise you, the diseases you brought from Saudi Arabia, they're not the reason. There isn't a vast ocean between Saudi Arabia and the rest of the Middle East. Just like the Arab slave trade that is only now brought to the public's attention, there is so much more to uncover in that Islamic skeleton closet. So it happened in the Middle East, it happened in Europe, and now is it going to happen in the United States?